Welcome back to Rising from the Shadows. I am your host, Marlon Wesh, and I'm honored to be joined by my guest, Coach Mac. Coach Mac is on a mission to revolutionize how you think, feel, act, react, and interact with your anxiety. She's your go to gal when all the therapeutic endeavors and the explorations haven't delivered diddly squat in reducing your anxiety. And she's here when you're ready to say bye bye to all the exhausting introspection and finally demystify what the heck has been going on for you, why it's continued to go on for you, what's there to do about it, and why all your dabblings and doings haven't delivered you sustained, feel great results. Oh, I can relate to that. Coach Mac, welcome to the pod. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm more excited than you. I guarantee that.
um, Today, you're an expert on, how could I put it, like rewiring the brain after trauma and anxiety and get it to a state of purposeful existence. Can you share with us your journey, a little bit of your journey? Like, where do you come from and how did you get here and working in this space?
Yeah. Well, I will also disclose I am not an expert, but I have had so much thrill and pleasure in learning from experts on these topics, and I'm happy to wear an expert in training hat today. I think
Okay, we'll take
that
it.
would feel more vibrant to me. Yeah. Well, oh my gosh, I started paying attention to our human behavior from a very early age, as all kids do. But I really started paying attention from a deeply conscious level, evaluating, well, okay, this person did this action. What was the result? Was there opportunity in between? What was missing? What's the gaps? What's the information we don't know? So these type of systematic human psychological, ecological thinking systems, I was really engaging in from a young age. Fast forward, I started to grow up, and like millions of people do, I started to experience anxiety symptoms. Of course, when I was younger, I did not have the words for that. I did not call it
Right.
that. It would just come out in all the weird and funky and mucky ways that anxiety can. The first part of, first half of my life of anxiety is not that interesting of a story. Where it gets more interesting is really the second half, where in my early to mid 20s, panic knocked on my door, and it pretty much knocked overnight. I had never known what panic attacks really were, what panic really was, what is often deemed and referred to as panic disorder. I don't like to really use those terms in my private practice for many reasons, but nonetheless, this thing called panic knocked on my door overnight, and my psychological state changed dramatically and quick. It changed hard, it changed fast, and the change was very rampant. Fast forward through years of effort and navigation to explore what the heck was happening, why was it happening, why is it continuing to happen, despite taking great care of my health, despite remaining deeply compassionate, deeply curious, despite not hesitating to reach out for personal and professional support. I just was not getting better. And not only was I not getting better, Marlon, I was getting way worse. And each year that went on and each new healthy thing I added into my life, the results were becoming more and more dwindling. So after seeing a handful of various medical and mental health practitioners, it became very clear that I was more dedicated and more successful in getting myself the results I was seeking. And as celebratory as I am at that, what's more important is that I saw that there were systematic gaps, and I didn't feel like it should have to be that way. So fast forward to today, and now I am so passionate about helping people save so much more brain pain, what I call the brain pain, the brain drain, and the wallet strain on their journey to vibrant mental health. And essentially, I'm on a mission to really make sure, folks are not experiencing all the gaps and hurdles that I experienced that really deeply prolonged how much I was suffering and the level of suffering. It was, most of it was completely unnecessary. And I didn't know. And I wish I would have had someone talk to me in the way that I now get the privilege and opportunity to talk to other folks. So that's how I ended up here in your space, Marlon. And I am excited to talk to you about anything you want to talk about with anxiety, mental health, nervous system functioning. I'm in it deeply.
Well, I'm gonna try really hard not to turn this interview into my own personal therapy session. But I can relate so much with your commentary, um, especially on like anxiety versus panic. I was just writing down that you said that the panic came. Not only did it come like suddenly, but it was like really fast, and totally can relate to that. Spent most of my life with anxiety. Um, was very functioning. I, I I couldn't even say that I had crippling anxiety because I wasn't crippled. I had it, but I was performing very well. I served 8 years in the Marines. I did very well that. I got out of the Marines. I went to college, did my undergrad, did my MBA. Started a business, bought a house, started a business. Like I was functioning, but there was always that anxiety. I didn't experience panic until like last year, and I knew it was different. I knew it was different, and it wasn't until that I actually watched your video on your YouTube channel. I was like, "Damn, like that's it. Like, yeah, that is the difference. It's not anxiety. It's such a deeper thing." But anyway, suffice it to say that survivors of narcissistic abuse, like myself, we're often experience extreme nervous system dysregulation. Um, what I thought it was just like a state of chronic anxiety. But what I felt and what I know now is just I was having panic episodes. Um, what's happening there when people like me are feeling that, and how can we regain a sense of safety in our own bodies, even when we're like far away from the trigger?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna take us on a little side, and I'm gonna have you bring us back to your the root
Okay.
of your question, because I want to touch on something for our listeners, just in case someone's listening and they're like, wait a second, ding ding ding, a little curiosity here. I want to clarify that panic definitely is a category of anxiety, and actually, it's really considered on the most extreme end of anxiety. But when I'm chatting with folks, whether it's in a conversation like this or clients I'm working with, you know, panic, although it is a form of anxiety, it operates so so blatantly different in its symptoms and how it can arise and come and go. And I mean, even you just said it, right? Is a year ago, you what you were experiencing in your body, you could tell was very different. So panic is absolutely anxiety, but it is the way it functions in the body. Just it just takes it to a whole other category, a whole other kind of container of and it presents a more unique opportunity for how we are addressing a conversation. If I was talking directly to someone with panic, I would start the conversation, carry the conversation, and end the conversation differently than if I had someone come to me and they're just saying, "Hey, I feel, generally pretty anxious all the time, and it's really affecting my life. And oh gosh, is this ever going to end?" Yada yada. Even though I have two people coming to me with anxiety, I would handle the conversations very differently with the language I'm using, the metaphors I'm using, the
Mhm.
symbolism, the energy of the conversation, because panic is a extra anxiety. I consider anxiety like a thin layer of honey that is always draped and glossed all over your body at all times for many people. So it's sticky and it's uncomfortable, and it tends to affect everything you are doing, everything you're feeling, every moment of your life. When you're sitting on the toilet, when you're at the gym, when you're trying to eat a meal, when you're trying to have a podcast conversation, it
Mhm.
just seems to never really go away for many people. And so panic is like someone coming up and pouring a whole jar of honey over your head. It's the same thing, but it's just a whole other degree of a circumstance and how it needs to be navigated. So, anyway, just with
On
that,
your on
yeah,
your YouTube video, you made you related it to like a horror movie, and I thought that was very interesting. Like you feel the thing like creeping up, but then it's in front of you, and you can't run away. You can't. And I thought that was so interesting because I didn't um I didn't have the language for that, but that's what it was. Like I felt like I should be able to like run or escape, but I couldn't. And it was just like this overwhelming feeling. Can you like share? I know I didn't say it that the right way. Can you give that metaphor?
Yeah, well, I'll be honest, I don't remember the exact metaphor you're talking about, but I can talk about the general theme of what you're getting
Okay.
at, which is, let's even use your words you just said, right? If you were trying to run away from someone, like let's kind of get a little bit violent and graphic here, because sometimes
Hmm.
it's needed. Imagine you're walking down the street and you turn around and God forbid, but you see someone running at you and they have some type of tool, a knife, a gun, a baseball bat. They got something and they're looking at you, and it is a clear intent that they are coming after you and they're looking to hurt you, right? You're going to have an immediate, automatic, natural, effortless response from your body. A physiological response
Yeah.
is going to fire off to help you get moving, and get moving very fucking quickly because
Hmm.
your life literally depends on it.
Yeah.
So imagine you're in that scenario. You turn around, you see uh, the person that's coming to violate your space, violate your safety. And then you get this flooding sensation throughout your whole body. Run now, run fast, run hard, run like your life depends on it, because guess what? It does. And
Hmm.
then you go to lift your feet to start running, and they're cemented into the ground.
Yeah.
And you're suddenly swiveling your head, looking back and forth, left and right, up and down, seeing the person come closer. Suddenly, you know the person's going to arrive in 15 seconds, and you try to lift your feet and they're cemented into the ground. You can't go anywhere. There's nothing actionable to do, at least not that you can see, right? Not that you can feel, not that you can access. So what's the real end all be all of what you're going to feel right there in that moment? You're going to feel terror. And
Yeah.
terror is a very particular feeling that most people, and I am so blessed and happy that I can say this, is that most people never experience terror in their life. Of course, there's been millions of people that absolutely have had life circumstances that did permit them to feel terror, but there's also so many millions and millions of people that have not and will never go throughout their life experiencing authentic terror. So the reason I'm saying that is because the word terror is not often and commonly, and I should say automatically, used in therapeutic spaces when someone is coming to a mental health practitioner, a coach, um, any support resource to talk about their panic. Most of the time, the word terror is not introduced to the person. Like, oh, are you experiencing terror? And it's
Mm.
because the word sounds terrifying, right? I mean, even just hearing terror, it's like, oh gosh. If I say, hey, Marlon, do you want to watch a horror movie? And you're like, oh my gosh, no, I don't want to feel horror, right? We automatically quiver.
Yeah.
And the thing is when you have someone coming to you with panic, the last thing you want to do is make them quiver more. So what
Yeah.
ends up happening? You spend months and years beating around the bush with them about what's really going on in their body. And the unintended consequence is they actually spend a prolonged time, decades even, not knowing what the hell is really going on in their body, why they're experiencing it, what to do about it, why is it continuing to go on. And if I just, back when I first started getting panic, if I just would have had anyone, I don't care. I don't care if it was a unicorn in the middle of the field, or a psychiatrist, or a man, my waiter at a restaurant, a therapist. I don't care who you are and who your title is. If I would have just had someone say to me, Mac, it sounds like you're experiencing this thing called panic. Panic is when you have internal sensations of terror. It's a physiological response. And I would like to explain to you why it happens. And there's some really interesting things I would love to lay out for you about why in the world your body can perform such an interesting dance.
Mm.
And I never once, Marlon, never once
Yeah.
had anyone lay any of that out for me. So to get back to your question, the YouTube video I made is a video where, yes, I was talking about panic and introducing panic, and there's a million and one ways I could have made that video better. But the main thing I wanted to highlight in that video is I didn't want to shy away from the word terror.
Yeah.
I didn't want to shy away from it because that's what's going on. You're not just experiencing fear.
Right.
You're not just experiencing fear. You're experiencing terror. And I sometimes say to people in my private conversations, but I'll say it to you here because I think you'll appreciate this. I often say that terror is the hell that hell fears.
Ooh.
Yes, it's the hell that hell fears. It is a world of a difference. It's not just I'm feeling very scared and
Yeah.
now I'm getting all these sensations. It's much more than that. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's the word
That
terror.
rings very true. Let me share. let me share with you when I first felt, I would say the only time I've ever felt terror in my life. I have gone through significant trauma, things that should really terrify people. None of it did. Not the the physical abuse from my family of origin, not the sexual trauma, not the boot camp in the Marines and 8 years of service. To put it in perspective, when I was in boot camp, my drill we would have we'd have free time at the end of the night, and that's when people would like write letters to their loved ones and work on their uniforms, etc. Um, my drill instructor called me into the hut and said, "Wesh, I'm tired of hearing of your fucking mother calling here. Go write some letters." Like, boot camp was so, like, unscary for me. I was tired, I was hungry. Yeah, it was like a vacation for me. Marine Corps boot camp was like a vacation for me, okay? So, things that really terrified people, the first time I experienced terror was, when I had made the decision, like, "Wow, I know what's right for me, and what's right for me is I need to ask my partner for a divorce." I was scared about the outcomes of, like, what does this mean? We have children together. Uh, you know, I was scared about not knowing what the future held, but that wasn't terrifying. What is it? February. I would say about a week ago, uh, last year, I received a text message from a good friend of mine from back home in Philly, who happens to be a therapist. She owns her own private practice, and she said, just want to let you know your partner texted me essentially asking for my help in controlling you and managing you, um, like in telling your story. I was like, what? And so she showed me the text messages, and she clocked it as manipulation right away. It's her job. And I remember, but my friend is a very objective person. She's not going to just tell me what I want to hear because I'm her friend. And I remember going, like, sending her, pictures of years ago of my journal, like combating everything that my partner was saying about me. And she's like, "Oh, yeah, that's not the story that she's telling." And that is when I realized. Um, that for over a decade, the relationships of over a decade that were created, um, not one person ever reached out to me and said, "Oh, I'm hearing some things that doesn't sound like the Marlon I know. Like, what's going on? Do you need help?" Not one person. And we're talking about people that our kids were growing up together. We shared birthday parties. We went trick or treating together. Um, to illustrate like how close we were getting as kind of like a parent group. Two of the families, they're of Polish descent, so every time they have a birthday party, they sing the happy birthday song in Polish, to the point where my son like knew the song.
Mhm.
you know um and nothing, not a word, not a word. um I got some very confusing calls from some family members, like like my youngest brother, who's like my favorite brother. They all know, and calling me and essentially um, uh, regurgitating their talking point about like how they're worried about me because of XYZ. Not coming with any curiosity, none of that. I was contacted by uh, uh, an uncle of theirs that is a psychiatrist, an MD, and sent me the most manipulative letter and essentially telling me that I should put the brakes on because, one, during the winter time, people, tend to get depressed. So why don't you wait until after the winter to make your decision? And also, I know you had a hard childhood, and we can't get away from our childhood no matter how hard we try. But didn't ask me a single goddamn question about like what's going on, how can I help? Like, I'm hearing this. I think you're a pretty decent person. It doesn't sound like you. Not one inquisitive question. I got an email from parents, saying, saying like, "Oh, I'm a business person. I know you're a business person, so I'm going to treat this as a case study." And did this case study on why I was doing the wrong thing. Literally ended with their conclusion saying, "My conclusion is you are not receiving adequate medical support." Why? Because they didn't like my therapist that essentially was supporting me as I was making this decision. I have an office out in town, also in my home office. I came home to a little placard that essentially said, "Remember all the things that you have now or things that you once prayed for." Just like when I tell you that manipulation cycle was intense, I realized for the first time in my life that I was standing alone. I lost my entire social circle, except for two friends. And when I realized that, I'm in my office right now, and when I was first going through that stage, I spent a lot of time in my office. It was like the only safe space for me. That is when I felt terror for the first time. It was this insane cold sweat. My teeth were chattering. Um, um, the level of paranoia, it's like, I felt that I was under surveillance constantly. There were some other things that indicated that I was being set up to fail. There was an incident with packing lunches for the kids, and in a pouch that I was like, "What? There are nuts in here. I can't send the kids to school with anything that has nuts." Um, and I was told, "No, that's okay. We can send those." And I go on Google. It's like, "What are the allergens?" Oh yeah, that specific nut is on the list. Like, you are a smart person. Why would you tell me that's okay to send? So the level of like I had to be vigilant. My hypervigilance was insane, and like my heart just like it felt like someone kicked me like right to my chest, and like I could not. In fact, I was lying on the floor. I was lying on the floor and I could not move. That was the first time I experienced terror, and I knew it was so different from all the anxiety that I experienced, in my 36 years of living at the time. It was different. It was so different. And I'm so glad you brought up the word terror, because even then and even now, before just talking to you right now, that is not what I would have used to describe it, but it is the most accurate description of what I felt.
Yes. And you know what? I am big, 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 and always approach every conversation with full curiosity. It doesn't matter if in 10 years from now I've had 5,000 clients come my way and really I'm just having the same conversation with each person over and over. I approach every conversation with 100% curiosity, because you never know for sure what experience someone is having. And more importantly, how they are perceiving that experience. That's a little bit different, right? And
Hmm.
I want to circle us back to something you said about the psychiatrist that called you. But um, going back to you saying that you feel like hearing me say the word terror made you feel like, yes, that's it, that's accurate, that's the right word. Well, I actually use that as a filtering system when people come to me to chat with me about anxiety attacks, panic attacks, or even if they don't have those words and they're just explaining their symptoms and they're like, I don't know what's going on with me. And I always do a little gentle poking and prodding, but I don't really have to. I don't have to go far to see if they're showing signs that they've experienced recent terror. And the truth is when you've experienced internal terror, it shows in your eyes. I don't even really
Mm.
need to hear it. I
Yeah.
almost don't even really need to hear you describe what your anxiety attack or panic attack was like, because how your body language, your tone of voice, how you're looking at me, but really it's in the eyes, because once you experience terror,
Yeah.
things aren't it's hard,
Yeah.
things aren't the same after that. Now, things I want to say, just so we're clear for all of our lovely listeners, things can go back to a harmonized state in your body and in your psychology. So when I say things are never the same again, I don't mean you're doomed and gloomed if you've experienced terror.
Right.
I just mean your perception of getting to identify and resonate and understand with that sensation can't. You can't go back in time. Like you now have that experience, and that experience will be taken with you, and you have more education. You have more
Hmm.
informed, you're more informed about that human experience, which, once again, going back to kind of the beginning of our conversation, most people go throughout their whole life without experiencing terror. People experience fear every day. People experience multiple layers of fear just stacked on top of each other, stacked on top of each other, stacked on top of each other, and they're just drowning in fear. You can still drown in fear and not experience terror. When you experience
Hmm.
terror, yeah, you're experiencing the hell that hell fears. Yeah. But going
Yeah.
back to what you shared about the psychiatrist who called you and didn't approach the conversation with any curiosity, Marlon, I will say to you that one reason I am so passionate doing what I now do to help people really revolutionize their relationship with anxiety is because I was in shock. I was in shock, and it took me years. I will say I wasn't, it wasn't automatic where I observed this and was thinking about this. It took me accumulated experiences, but I was really shocked by all the different practitioners I would go to help with my anxiety and panic, and the lack of curiosity. Never once did I have any of them say, "Oh, interesting. It sounds like maybe you're experiencing this thing called panic or really high persistent levels of anxiety. What is that really like for you?" I mean, Marlon, we're talking what I consider
Wow.
basic. We're talking
I don't
basic.
think I've ever been asked that question. Tell me more. What is that really like for you? I don't.
What is that really like for
What
you?
is that?
But let's just touch on really quickly why that's so important, because it's not important so that you can talk about your feelings. Hey, I'm not here to dismiss the value that can come with talking about your feelings, but it's about the real effectiveness and value and what we're doing and how we're spending our time. When I'm chatting with someone and I want to hear what anxiety has been like for them, it's not because I'm really trying to create a quote safe space for them to talk about their feelings for 30 minutes. It's because I want to hear exactly, I want it to be pinpointed. How has it been like for you? Because we can then take that. I can use your language, not mine. And I can then use my skills to maneuver that into a much more effective conversation so we can move forward. And that is a very different approach than is commonly done in a sobering amount of therapeutic spaces.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder if it's just like, you know, everybody, it doesn't matter what job you have, right? At some point you do it so much that you kind of like are on autopilot. Um, and so I wonder sometimes if it's just like, I don't know if unimportant is the is the right word to put, but to your point, like I've been in some type of therapeutic setting, whether it's group or one-on-one or whatever, probably since I was 19 years old. I'll be turning 38 this year. I don't think I've I don't think I've ever been asked that. Like, what was that like for you? Like, you told me this. What was that like for me? I don't think I've ever been asked that.
Yeah. And let's
That's
even take it
wild.
one more level. Actually asking the person who's in suffering, hey, what is your perception of what's going on in your body?
Yeah.
Right? We don't even have to bring out the vocabulary words. We don't even have to bring out things like anxiety, panic. We can even cut those words and we can say, what is your perception of what is going on in your body? I once again never had anyone ask me that. If someone would have asked me that and guided me through a effective conversation surrounding that, Marlon, I guarantee you, I
Mm.
guarantee you at least 5 to 7 years of my deepest states
Yeah.
of anxiety would have been eradicated on the spot, on the spot.
Mm.
So the power
I
of
got
conversations, and Marlon, you know this, you're passionate about powerful conversations. Yeah, the caliber and
yeah.
craft of how we're having conversations, it matters. It
It
matters.
matters so much. And I think I'm sensing this from you too. Like when you are a seeker and you like you're very cerebral, you're looking for like kind of like a logical like answer. I think the therapeutic setting is different. It's not enough for like talk therapy and things like that. Like there needs to be, and to be frank, I switched to a new therapist last year, and I would say in 2 sessions, it was better than, like, all the therapy I had in my entire life. Her modality is IFS, internal family systems, and that worked particularly for someone who's what's it called when everything is in your brain? You're not an actualizer, in a
You're highly introspective.
no, kind of, but it's like when you're, like, too smart for your own good that you're not connected to your feelings. It's just like, intellectualizer. Intellectualizer? I think that's the
Oh,
word.
yes,
Um
yeah.
Um, and so when you're an intellectualizer, you can be like, yes, I understand this and how that's connected, but you like don't feel it. And then doing that was, I want to say, the first time I felt connected to like what you said, like how are you feeling this? And she asked that to all the time. Where in your body are you feeling this? Describe how that's feeling. That has been so impactful in how I've connected with um, trauma, my ability to release, to comfort that version of me that needed comforting or protecting. Um, so impactful, so impactful. So we've been talking a lot about kind of like the gaps uh, that exist in traditional therapeutic norms. Uh, After leaving toxic relationships, so many survivors, they assume that they're gonna feel like instant relief, like, "I'm free. I've escaped." But instead, so many get stuck in rumination and self-doubt, and we're just waiting for things to magically improve. Um, why does this happen, and how do you help somebody break free from just, like, waiting for healing?
Okay, there's multiple parts to this, and of course, Marlon, like there's so much I could say on this. There's so much you and I could talk about. There's so much you could say, right? And there's so many different shapes, flavors, and colors of situations. But let's stay really basic, because often the most basic is really the most effective in
Okay.
getting to an understanding that we're trying to highlight. And the thing is is that when we are exposed, now it doesn't matter if we're talking in your childhood, growing up. Yes, it tends to be incredibly impactful during those psychologically and neurologic, highly developmental stages of your neurology and psychology. Yes, that's why childhood is a big topic when it comes to trauma and nervous system healing and all this stuff. But at any point in your life, if you are put in a environment, a space, a container for existing, you run into a particular circumstance or experience, even short term, where it trains your brain that you will be better, do better, survive faster,
Mhm.
survive longer if you intake information. Intake, intake, intake. Keep your eyes open, keep your eyes open, keep your ears wide.
Yeah.
Collect data, collect data, collect data, because any data is better than no data.
Yeah.
More data is better than less data. If you have all the data, your chances is the
That's us
highest.
all. Yeah.
Yes, right? So if we get out of a circumstance, a abusive childhood, environment, a narcissistic, uh, domestic interpersonal relationship with a partner, it doesn't matter what it is. But if we were in a container where we were constantly reading data more, learning if we read data more, once again, we will survive better, faster, longer. Then when we leave, yes, we're free. We're free. We're free from the container, but your nervous system comes with you. And
Yeah.
the nervous system became literate in how to gather data, gather it more, gather it faster. You don't, I mean, Marlon, right now, I don't know your exact education level on a formal level, but I don't need to know, because I can tell from who you are, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, you've read a few books. I can guarantee you've read a few books,
I
okay?
was homeschooled. I was a nerd.
Yes, yes. So if right now I looked at you and I said, Marlon, please snap your fingers, and within the next 1 to 30 seconds, I would like you to, erase all your literacy levels and start fresh. In about 30 seconds from now, you will forget how to speak English, read the English language, whatever little bit of Haitian you might have known from your childhood, whatever it is, right? This is just not going to happen. I mean, it's a silly thing to even imagine happening, but yet we think that that's supposed to happen to our nervous system.
Mm.
And not only we think, we subconsciously, there's a part of many of our brains that expect it. We like
Yeah.
expect that the literacy of our nervous system and the attunement of that literacy should change on a dime when we get free, when we leave the house,
Yeah.
when we leave the marriage, when we leave the abusive father, when we leave the, you know, the perpetrator in our church, when we leave this or this, and it's not how it works, right? So that's,
It's not.
yeah, that's the first piece I want to hit on. You asked me something else. There was kind of a second question. Remind me what that
Well,
was.
the second question was pretty much, wait, did I move the page? Oh, uh, pretty much just how can we begin to make, um, uh, break away from that cycle since it is in us, right? We are getting that data, constantly reevaluating. How do we, like, what are the first steps to relaxing, for lack of better words, like shutting off the computer processor that's just constantly looking for more data?
Yeah, this one is a difficult question. It's not a difficult question to answer. It is a very difficult question to answer succinctly and with value for our listeners. So I'm going to say a few things pretty quickly, and then I really want to invite anyone that's listening that's really interested in exploring this more to do that exploration and explore those curiosities
Mhm.
outside of Marlon and I's conversation. But the first piece is various somatic practices and opportunities. And in other words, what does that mean? That means different outlets for actually utilizing your physical body to move energy around. Okay, so there's lots of different types of what's called somatic interventions to the nervous system, somatic practices. Uh, there's many practitioners, there's a lot of information online, books, all that. So any curious listener can go and look that up. What I find to be the more important thing to share is to not go down a rabbit hole about talking about somatic practices for the nervous system. I find what is the highest value to highlight is that, because what I see is that I see have a lot of people tiptoe in my world, and hey, this is a part of my personal story too, where you end up dabbling. I call it the dabblings and doings. You dabble here, you invest in
Mhm.
this here, you know, the dabblings and the doings, and you dabble and do in a lot of different somatic practices, a lot of different breath work, yoga work, uh, and sustained results in harmonizing your nervous system can still not be achieved. And it's
Yeah.
important to highlight why. Well, what's the quick and dirty why? The very, very quick and dirty why is because if there's a part of your brain, and it's very likely your subconscious brain, that is processing data in such a way that it does, where it keeps sending signals to the whole of your brain that there is still something you need to do about an event, a person, a circumstance.
There is still something you need to do.
Need to do. Yes, and I'll get back onto this action piece.
Okay.
But that will keep sending signals to your brain. No matter how much yoga you do, no matter how much breath work you do, it is true. See here, there's a little chicken and egg situation that happens in conversations. Yes, pertaining to anxiety, but this goes for stress, depression, trauma healing. It's all about nervous system regulation. You'll hear people say things like, "Your thoughts affect your mind. Change your thoughts.
Mhm.
Change your world." That is true. But there's also the inverse of that is true. If you change your body, you're moving your body, you're using your body, right? This goes back to the somatic, it changes your brain. So, how we use our body changes our brain, how we engage with our brain changes our body, and everything that's going on with the functionality of our body. So, what ends up happening is that the people that end up staying stuck and feel, I'm talking about, Marlon, the people that for decades and decades are like clearly still living in their trauma from their childhood. It's often not because they weren't doing things, trying things, seeing practitioners, trying to, exercise and do this. They were doing the doings and the dabblings. But the issue is that they were likely doing the doings and the dabblings for just half of the coin. They were
Mm.
focusing a lot on somatic practices because they knew if they moved their body, focused on their body, nourished their body, it would change the mind. But the whole time they were doing that and investing so much time, energy, resources, money, mental real estate, doing those activities, they weren't doing anything to change how the subconscious mind was processing data and sending signals to the brain. So you'll end up, our dear precious listeners, you'll end up like me, Mac. Mac's my name. And I spent 10 years studying in a yoga ashram, doing deep meditation daily. I actually was a meditation instructor, a yoga instructor. I run and exercise almost every day. I've ate very healthy for most of my life. I spent a lot of time outdoors. The list goes on and on and on. Well, how does someone like me then keep getting worse and worse with their anxiety? Well, I'll tell you why. Because the second half of the coin wasn't happening. There was never the areas of my subconscious brain that needed nourishment were never getting nourished. So the same data kept processing on my brain and sending signals and wreaking, sending those signals out to my body. My body felt like, there was havoc being wreaked onto it. And it just didn't matter how much, healthy, good activities I pursued. So Marlon, to get to your question, what does someone do? Well, I try to highlight to people that the most powerful thing you can do, yes, do the somatic stuff, do the breath work, do the body stuff, do your exercise, eat healthy, check your functional medicine. Are you deficient in nutrients? My gosh, the list that I could provide for you goes on and on. But none of that matters anywhere near as much as if your subconscious brain is not getting appropriate attention. So there are many people, I'm one of them, but there are now hundreds and thousands of people that are getting more and more trained and more skilled at really speaking to the whole of the human brain. And the thing is most of the time people go to various therapeutic settings with traditional talk therapist, and I say talk therapist as a loose general term. I try not to use, specific formalities and names and titles for listeners' sake, but for a traditional talk therapy setting, most of the time, that practitioner is speaking to your conscious mind and your logic,
Yeah.
and they're rarely speaking to your subconscious mind. And then we wonder why all of our talk therapy is not working, or we've been in it for a decade and we're still having panic attacks. So go find someone who is versed in, skilled in, trained in working with the subconscious mind. Keep doing all the healthy, good stuff. Keep staying curious, keep staying compassionate, but focus on the subconscious mind, because if not, you're going to have this electrical current that keeps being sent from your
Yeah.
brain to the rest of your body.
So what you said just then at the end, like my brain went into a tangent because it reminded me, my friend that's a therapist, she's actually back in school now to be an analyst, which is really cool. So she came to visit me. I'm in New England. She came from Philly to visit me last year, and she was like telling me about some of like the homework she was doing, and one of her professors is like well known in the field, so like kind of like is teaching his own textbook like to her. But she sent me a case, and I don't know any of this stuff. But she sent me a case that was interesting. It was like an addiction case where the person was the analyst was in the therapeutic setting, and it was interesting. You were talking about talking to the subconscious, and the conclusion was that you cannot, I hope I'm saying this right. Like you cannot work with the person that's physically in front of you. You have to figure out what part of that person has shown up to the session. Is it the addicted self? Is it because like you would relate to them differently, right? Like the addictive personality, if that's the one showing up, they're not telling you the truth, right? Because it was just I'm not explaining it right, but it was really interesting how uh essentially he was talking about speaking to the actually treating the subconscious, not who's physically present in front of you. So I made
No,
that
I'm with you. I understand what you're saying, and this brings us back to what we were talking about earlier, which is how shocking it was in my process. A decade ago is when I started, but when I started seeing various practitioners for support for my mental health, how I was shocked. I wasn't being asked what I thought was really basic, like curiosity-based questions,
Wait, I have a
like what
question
is
for you.
anxiety like for you? How is it showing up for you? And once again, it's not really the main value and merit in that is not to create a safe space for someone to talk about their
Yeah.
feelings. It's to figure out who is showing up in front of me. What parts of them are most coming top of mind, is most showing up in their nervous system right now. Let's work with that. That's where more gold is. That's where we can have more power, more effect. I'm obsessed with the word effect because I so
Hmm.
often see people, and I was in this as well, engaging in well to do activities, and the well intentions are there for all parties, the client, the practitioner, the therapist, the patient, you name it. But where's the effectiveness? And how are we
Yeah.
having an
Yeah.
honest evaluation and transparent conversation around that? And
Hmm.
Marlon, the subconscious mind thing, I want a quick little caveat I want to touch on in case there's any listeners to this conversation that their mind is starting to go here. A lot of people, when they think of or hear about the subconscious mind, they instantly think of something like hypnotherapy.
Right. Right.
Yes. And hypnotherapy is that. It is all about talking to the subconscious mind, and I won't touch on that too much, but that's what it is. It is a methodology and a really powerful one. If done and administered at a high level of craft and caliber, it can be a phenomenal therapeutic modality for many people, because why? It's nourishing their subconscious brain, which hasn't gotten attention. But you don't have to do, quote, hypnotherapy. And that's what I do with folks that come to me. I do really, really, I'm talking the most basic of most basic of most basic um, uh, interventions and approaches to speaking to more of their whole mind, their subconscious mind. Well, Marlon, what is a really easy way to do that? Symbols, metaphors, analogies. When you've heard a really good like metaphor, a really good analogy, and you're like, oh yeah, yeah, like this
I mean, that's
thing.
how I felt about the horror movie thing that when I
Yes,
watched
yeah,
the video.
right.
Yeah.
You responded. You didn't just agree for the sensation of agreeableness with me. Your whole self, emphasis on your whole self responded, leaned in, perked up, and said, ah, yes. Right. That is a sign that more of your mind, if not all of your mind, suddenly harmonized together. And that's why it can feel so good. So, like a little sparkle, or like a little like laugh, or a little humor, or a little ooey gooiness when we hear someone give a really, really good metaphor, when we hear someone give a really good analogy. It like hits a part in us. Well, guess what
Yeah.
that part is? That part is your whole brain just harmonizing for a brief second. A brief second in your day, your conscious mind just harmonized with your subconscious mind. That felt really fucking good. It felt like a little light bulb, and then boom, it starts
Hmm.
away. So we only get to experience that like sensation just for a quick second, like the moment someone introduces a great analogy. Well,
Yeah.
we can, and I say we, I mean, yes, we as all of us in culture and society, but in particular, those of us that are dedicating our time and energy to helping other people with their mental health, their nervous system, healing, we can really up level the caliber and the craft of how we are talking to people. And you don't need to be, certified in 5 different methodologies of hypnotherapy in order to accomplish that.
Yeah.
You don't.
I there's this book written by Annette Simmons, and I must confess, I felt it was a hard read, um, which is interesting because of the title. I love the title, and the title is "Whoever Tells the Best Story Wins." And the idea of the book was saying like nobody needs information to be convinced, and logical facts and yada yada. Whoever the person that is persuaded is the person is the person that can tell the best story. And I found um before we started, we were talking about some of the other episodes, and you had mentioned that you like the way I talk, and I realized, and I've gotten this from journaling. I've journaled since I was a kid, and like telling stories is how I connect to myself and to other people. And anytime somebody can take me on a journey with a concept, that's how I like connect to it. It's like, oh, there it is. There it is. Like you took me from, where I currently am and like my understanding of this. You introduced something new that challenged what I previously thought. Um, and somehow guided me to like a profound realization. Eh, those are the things that have had the most impact in my life. Then, like you said, like all of the books, all the articles, all the how to, why am I, can I, will I. Um, it's all cerebral. And sometimes it just doesn't connect at that level. I totally agree.
Yeah. And that's, you just said all the books, all the articles. That's part of the dabblings and doings, right? And everyone that tiptoes in my world has my exact history. And I say me because I'm leading the parade. Like I'm raising my
Hmm.
hand. Our listeners can't see it, but I'm raising my hand, dear listeners. Like I was the dabbler doer. I was into the personal development books. I was
Yeah.
podcasts listening every day. I was, going to seminars. I was seeing the therapist. I was just all these things. But God, I just wish someone would have stopped me, kind of shook my shoulders, looked me in the eye, and said, you know, are you familiar that there's something called the subconscious brain and it processes data a bit differently and it needs to harmonize with your conscious brain or else all this shit you're doing, ooh, baby, this is going to get you
Hmm.
minimal results. Like I would have paid someone $1 million to have just done that because the amount of pain that I was
Yeah.
in. Yeah. And the amount of, it's not
I
just me.
wonder
The amount of
though.
pain millions of people are in because they're not aware of that. It's a real shame.
I wonder though. And so I'm there now, right? Where I'm no longer in that research mode. You I wonder if it's just the rite of passage. Because I ask myself, like, if would I have been receptive, or like would have that been enough for me at that in that place that I was? Um, or would I have been like, no, there's something more. This I don't know. I don't know. Uh, Sometimes I feel like specifically um, healing from like narcissistic abuse, like you just like go down the rabbit hole of learning everything about it. The entire cycle, the science, the methods, and of course, everyone uses the same methods. It's like insane how predictable it is. Um, it's honestly quite comical when you're no longer in the fight of or flight method. It's just like, oh my god, this is what's happening right now. This is so funny. Um, which happened this week to me. And I'm like, oh, that's very predictable. But I wonder if that was just like I needed to have exhausted all the knowledge thing that I felt like I needed to keep myself safe, to like realize I'm still not safe in my body. I still don't feel safe in my body. There's something else. Um, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that this is a beautiful segue back to some of the things we talked about, right? Is the data collection. Our nervous system became literate in, and this isn't, by the way, for our listeners, this isn't just if you experience trauma. This isn't
Right.
just if you're, escaping or fleeing from or transitioning from a hard situation. Our nervous system and our body is naturally wired to understand that if we collect data and collect more data, we will be more equipped to navigate a circumstance with more tact, more skill. Because even in our caveman days, that remains true. If you
Hmm.
have data on where the lion is in the bush, oh, it's on the third bush to the left is where the lion cave is. Well, hey, that's data. And the more data you have about the lion's behavior and activity and when it comes out at night and which cave it's living in, like that's going to help your survival. So we have this natural tendency to collect data regardless of our trauma background or not, right? And then of course those of
Hmm.
us that go through any type of traumatic background, like we're just amped up times 10. Like we're really
Yeah.
good. And that's where we get, high functioning anxiety. That's you and me, baby. We're the high functioning
Brain
anxiety.
accountants.
That was me. I mean, oh yeah. I mean, I was panicking and hiding behind buildings, but yet I got multiple college degrees and, did all the
Yeah.
things, right? So anyway, where was I going with that? The data collection. So it leaks into when we show up to help ourselves. We go through life experiences. And this is you, Marlon. This is me. This is millions of others. We go through certain life experiences. We go through maybe certain types of rites of passages in our own ways, and we go to help ourselves. Well, what's a great way to help ourselves? Boom, insert in the nervous system default. We need data. So what's a
Mm.
great way to get data? We have to learn. Okay, if we're going to learn, what are we going to do? Okay, we're going to get the books. We're going to go to the therapy sessions. We're going to listen to the podcast episodes. And hey, I'm saying this, we're on a podcast episode, but you get what I'm saying. Like,
Please still listen to my. No.
yes, please still listen. But I'm talking
Yeah.
about and I hope that there's some listeners that are smiling right now because you're doing, maybe you've experienced the same thing of what I'm talking about, of deep diving, listening to hundreds of podcast episodes about the same topic. It's the data collection. And that's not bad. I'm not here to say all the data collection is bad. Once again, there's value and merit in it, or else our body wouldn't be neurowired to prioritize data collection. But let's go back to that word effectiveness. We only have so many years on Earth. And last time I checked, I'm getting older. Every time I look in the mirror, I see another fine line under one of my eyes or, whatever it is. And so we're all always getting older. So we have to, we only get so many years on this earth. And so it becomes a conversation of where does the data collection process help versus hinder us to getting effective results of where we're trying to go. And Marlon, I think I'm with you that there is a little bit of a rites of passage that you have to go through where you don't really land on that answer for yourself until you land on that answer for yourself. And for folks that come into my world, I'm really often trying to shorten their timeline of suffering, but I like to always say to them, I'm not trying to just give you the shortcut because shortcuts are sexy. I want to find a way to give you a shortcut where we're not going through so many years of unnecessary suffering. Emphasis on that, because let's be honest. Life is always going to have inherent sufferings. Yep. And tomorrow, if you don't have any sufferings, well, guess what? 5 years from now, you're going to. You're going to break the leg. You're going to get released from your job. The wife's going to leave you. The dog's going to die early. Whatever it is, it's life. Life will continue.
It's the human condition.
Yes, it's a human condition. So if we already know that suffering is an inherent part of the human condition, it's not about let's do the sexy shortcut and not have any suffering and then give ourselves a trophy at the end. It's how can we step up and be brave and bold enough to say, I'm willing to identify what is unnecessary suffering. And I'm going to take the courageous steps to reduce that as much as possible. And then really lean in and celebrate the inherent parts of the human condition that I don't get to take the exit sign from. I don't get to void myself out of. Yeah.
Mac, talk to the people. Any closing thoughts? If you could, you've summed up so much in so many different places in this conversation. But walking away from somebody that's seeing themselves in our conversation, perhaps identifying that they are going through unnecessary suffering, what's the first step to enough is enough of the data collection? Something else has to be done. What's the first step to get them into that something else?
I think the first step is exactly what you just laid out. And I call it the 3 R's. It's your response, results, and repetition cycle. I don't need to get into that, but the end all be all is, hey, we're feeling this thing. We're going through this thing. We're healing from this thing. Insert in blank: anger, panic, anxiety, depression, whatever. We're going through this thing. We've been trying these things. Okay, so that's the action piece. What is have an honest and transparent conversation with yourself. What is the result you've been getting from your dabblings and doings, from your data collection, from the person you're working with, from the conversations you're having with your friends, from the conversations you are having with yourself in your head? What results is that getting you? And are you repeating that same cycle of that, participating in certain actions and responses and getting certain results, and then letting that be on repeat for weeks, months, years, decades? Mm-hmm. It's about exactly what you already said, Marlon. It's about that general awareness, first and foremost, of, oh, I don't think that this is just it. I don't think this is working for me. I've been doing these things and my intuition is telling me that there is something more. There is something else. There is something missing from my process, and just getting more curious about that. That is the most bare bones, basic next step, but it's the most powerful. It's so simple, but it's so powerful. Marlon, I can't tell you. I talk to people every day. Just this morning, I was talking to multiple people on, I'm a part of a lot of Facebook groups, massive Facebook groups. I'm talking that have, 80,000 people in them, people that are riddled with anxiety and depression, and they're looking for help. And I often try to show up in servitude every day and give a little bit of my knowledge and resource and extension for support. But I see the same thing on repeat every day from thousands of people. And in the deepest parts of their struggling, they've lost sight, and not to their fault, because there's a lot of things that are going on in the background that's making it very hard for this to come to the surface. But it's so easy to lose sight of bare bones basics evaluations. Is this resource helping me? Is this action getting me this result? Right. So returning back to that, that's what I would love to see for our listeners. That's my intention for all of our listeners, to return back to that basic, honest evaluation of yourself so you can pivot from there.
Oh, I love that so much. This has been such a great conversation, and I know the listeners are going to leave with so much value. The last section of my interviews, I call this this I believe section, and it kind of sounds like this. So, for me, I believe that a hope of a life worth living, that's everyone's birthright. And in us, we all have this innate inner knowing. We could call it a compass that is directing us to that life. And once we tap into that and trust it, we get to live the life that we want to live, and we get to live it on our own terms. This I believe. I would love to hear something that at the innermost part of your being, something for sure, and is kind of like foundational to your core. And if you could add this I believe at the end.
Can I start with it too? I feel like I need a sandwich of this I believe, this I believe.
Go ahead.
So this I believe is that anything with your psychology and your mental health can change. When I was in the deepest states of my panic-ridden psychology, and my vision was changing, every second of every day for years on end, I was experiencing terror. And no, it wasn't just one panic attack. I started living in perpetual panic. I had a mental health authority lean in and look at me and say, what you quote have, which by the way, you don't have panic, you experience panic, but that's a different conversation. What you have, you will likely have for forever. And anyone that I've seen come before you hasn't really made it out. Listeners, you absolutely can change anything about your mental health and your psychology. This, I believe, capital B, capital E, capital LIVE, underlined. This, I believe.
Wow. Thank you. That was so great. For anyone that's listening, how can we get a hold of you?
Yeah, it's simple. You can come to my website, Actionable Anxiety. You can just type in Coach Mac, M-A-K, and you will find me on the interweb. I'm on YouTube. I have a Facebook website, all that good stuff. And so just come and connect with me. And if I show up to be of service to folks every day, including folks that aren't looking to directly work with me. So if you have any questions, if you want assistance and support on next steps, that's what I'm here for.
Thank you so much. And of course, we'll put that information in the description of the video. But that's the end of our episode today. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us today. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Rising from the Shadows. And I just want to remind you, as always, that healing isn't just about erasing the past or erasing the shadows. It's about learning to thrive in your own light. So rise today, rise tomorrow, and rise always, because the shadows don't stand a chance. Thank you. Take care. That's it for today's episode of Rising from the Shadows. I want to thank you for listening and for being a part of this incredible community of survivors and thrivers. If this episode or any other episode resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I also want to hear from you. If you have a personal story of rising above life's challenges to become the best version of yourself, and you'd like to share it on the podcast, send me a DM on Instagram at Rise with Marlon, or email at marlon@marlonwesh.com. I would love to connect with you. And if you're ready to break through and build unstoppable momentum in your life, head over to marlonwesh.com to learn about private coaching or for booking me to speak at your event. Until next time, live the life you want to live and live it on your own terms.